An aircraft carrier sits dead in the water. 3 days of failure. Dozens of engineers from the Navy's finest teams brought in. Top contractors flown to the scene. Nothing works. The crisis deepens as Chinese vessels circle closer. Then, a helicopter lands. Among the new arrivals steps a woman in civilian clothes. No uniform, no explanation, just a worn leather bag and eyes that miss nothing. The engineers exchange glances when she dismisses their work and asks for the real schematics. Hours later, as hope fades, a deep vibration begins to build from below. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories about unsung heroes and classified missions, consider subscribing for more untold tales from history. The USS Odysseus, America's newest supercarrier, floated eerily still in the South China Sea. What was meant to be a show of force during rising tensions had become an international embarrassment. The revolutionary propulsion system had failed catastrophically during high-alert operations. Commander Alexander Beaumont paced the bridge, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. 3 days had passed. 3 days of the Navy's best engineers working around the clock. 3 days of defense contractors flying in their top specialists. 3 days of the Pentagon demanding hourly updates. "Nothing, sir," Lieutenant Fiona Duval reported, her voice strained from lack of sleep. Chief Engineer Lang says they've tried everything short of divine intervention. Beaumont stopped at the window, staring out at the support vessels surrounding them like anxious nurses attending a fallen giant. Beyond them, the horizon remained clear for now, but satellite intel confirmed Chinese vessels were approaching, staying just outside the perimeter that would constitute a provocation. "We need options," Lieutenant Beaumont said. "The longer we sit dead in the water, the more Beijing thinks we're vulnerable." "Yes, sir. Admiral Fisher is in engineering now with the Lockheed team." Beaumont nodded grimly. When Indo-Pacific sends an admiral personally to oversee a technical issue, the situation had moved well beyond concerning. In the cavernous engineering bay below, dozens of exhausted specialists in naval uniforms and corporate polos huddled around schematics and diagnostic screens. Arguments broke out occasionally, quickly hushed, but indicative of mounting frustration. The neural network controlling the propulsion matrix is rejecting all override attempts. A Lockheed Martin specialist explained to Admiral Fisher, who towered over the assembled experts with a stern expression that had barely changed in 3 days. "It's like it's been programmed to fail this way." Fisher's expression darkened. "Are you suggesting sabotage?" "I'm suggesting we're out of conventional solutions, sir." The Admiral turned to Chief Engineer Lang, a brilliant Nigerian American who had helped design parts of the propulsion system. "Your assessment?" Lang wiped sweat from his brow. "Something is fundamentally wrong at the algorithmic level. We keep running diagnostics, but it's as if the system is hiding the problem from us." "That's not possible," another engineer interjected. "Systems don't hide problems." "This isn't a conventional system," Lang replied. "The quantum processing core makes decisions faster than we can track them. That was the whole point of the design." Fisher stepped away, speaking quietly into a secure phone. The conversation was brief but intense. When he returned, his face was a carefully composed mask. "Washington is sending one more specialist team. They arrive tomorrow morning." As the carrier sat vulnerable, surrounded by support vessels, Chinese military aircraft performed increasingly bold flyovers at the edge of international airspace. Each passing hour escalated the diplomatic tension. That night, in the officers' mess, the mood was somber. Commander Beaumont sat with his department heads, picking at food none of them wanted. 3 days, Weapons Officer Garrick said, breaking the silence. 3 days of the most advanced engineering minds in the world, and they can't figure out why our ship won't move. "It's more complicated than that," Communications Officer Sterling replied. "This isn't just an engine failure. The quantum navigation system is rejecting all inputs." Beaumont put down his fork. "I've seen a lot in 20 years with the Navy, but never anything like this. It's like the ship decided to quit." "Ships don't decide anything," Garrick countered. "This one does," Lang said from the doorway. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, which was probably accurate. "That's what makes the Odysseus different. The autonomous decision-making capability is what gives us the edge over the Chinese fleet." "Fat lot of good it's doing us now," someone muttered. Lang didn't argue. He just grabbed coffee and left. Day 4 began with the distant thrum of a helicopter. A small group disembarked onto the flight deck. Another team of experts, everyone assumed. Among them walked a woman in her 52nd, dressed in simple civilian clothes, faded jeans, a navy button-down shirt, and worn leather boots. Her silver-streaked auburn hair was pulled back in a practical bun. She carried only a worn leather messenger bag. Lieutenant Commander Langford met the new arrivals. He barely glanced at the woman, focusing instead on the uniformed officers accompanying her. "The Pentagon sent more help?" he asked. A stone-faced naval intelligence officer handed him a tablet. "These clearances come directly from the Joint Chiefs Commander. No questions, full access." Langford scanned the document, his eyes widening slightly. "You understood. I'll escort you to engineering." The woman, Isabella Thorne, according to the document, followed silently, observing everything with piercing gray eyes. When they reached the engineering deck, the cacophony of desperate troubleshooting fell silent as heads turned toward the newcomers. "Another expert?" Chief Engineer Lang asked, exhaustion evident in his voice. "Apparently," Langford replied, uncertain. Thorne didn't wait for further introduction. She moved to the central console, gently but firmly displacing a contractor. "I need the original schematics," she said, her voice quiet but carrying unexpected authority. "Not the ones you've been working with." "The originals, ma'am. These are the originals," protested a defense contractor. A flicker of something, amusement perhaps, crossed her face. "No, they're not." Admiral Fisher stepped forward. "And you are someone who can help?" She answered simply, already tapping at the console. "If you let me." Chief Lang exchanged glances with the Admiral, who gave a subtle nod. "Give her whatever she needs," Fisher ordered, then lowered his voice to Langford, "and watch her closely." As the engineering team reluctantly made space for her, a silver-haired Master Chief in the back of the room stared at Thorne, his face suddenly ashen. Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by something else. Respect, tinged with fear. "Master Chief Worthington," Langford said, noticing the man's reaction. "Is everything all right?" Worthington straightened, his weathered face returning to professional neutrality. "Yes, sir." Just surprised to see a civilian consultant given this level of access. Langford studied him for a moment longer, but didn't press the issue. The Joint Chief seemed to think she's worth it. Thorne worked methodically, speaking only to request specific information or access to secured systems. When Lang attempted to explain their troubleshooting process so far, she listened politely, but with the air of someone hearing a child describe how to ride a bicycle. "You're focusing on system responses," she finally said. "I need to see the core algorithm architecture. That's classified beyond even Admiral Fisher's clearance," Lang explained. Thorne didn't look up from her screen. "Check my authorization again." Lang did, and his expression changed from skepticism to confusion. "How do you have Omega level clearance?" She didn't answer, simply waited until he reluctantly entered his authentication codes to unlock the most protected layers of the ship's operating system. Hours passed. The engineering team continued their work around her, but with decreasing confidence and increasing curiosity about the quiet woman who seemed to understand systems they had spent years designing. By evening, Commander Beaumont received the latest update from Langford. "Nothing new to report, sir. The civilian woman is still working, but hasn't shared any findings." "Who is she?" Langford shook his head. "Her credentials check out, but there's something odd. When I ran a deeper check on her name, all I got was a classified firewall." Beaumont frowned. "Keep an eye on her. The last thing we need is someone making this situation worse." On the bridge, tensions were rising as reports came in of Chinese naval vessels moving closer to the carrier group. "They're testing us," Tactical Officer Bertrand said, pointing to the radar screen, probing our defensive perimeter to see how we'll respond. "Maintain alert status," Beaumont ordered, "but no aggressive posturing. Last thing we need is to provoke them while we're stuck here." As night fell, most of the engineering team rotated out for a few hours of much-needed rest. Thorne remained hunched over her console, requesting only coffee and occasional clarification about specific system elements. Near midnight, Master Chief Worthington returned to engineering with 2 cups of coffee. He placed one silently next to Thorne, then stood watching her work. After several minutes of silence, she spoke without looking up. "It's been a long time, Master Chief. You remember me? I remember everyone on the Thresher, too." Worthington's voice dropped to a whisper. No one's supposed to know that name. And yet, here we are. She finally looked up at him, her eyes tired but alert. You're a long way from the Barren Sea. So are you. Never thought I'd see you again after what happened. She returned to her work. I'm surprised they let you stay in service after that mission. They didn't have much choice after you made sure there were survivors to ask questions. He hesitated. The others who know what really happened, they've all been transferred to different commands, retired or promoted to positions where they won't talk. And you? I keep my head down and do my job, but I never forgot what you did. He glanced around the engineering bay. Does anyone here know who you really are? She shook her head slightly. And they don't need to. When I'm done, I'll leave, just like before. You saved 118 lives that day, mine included. You deserve recognition. For the first time, a genuine smile touched her lips. Since when do people like us get what we deserve, Chief? The conversation ended as Lieutenant Commander Langford returned, watching them with poorly concealed suspicion. Finding everything you need? He asked Thorne. Not yet, but I'm getting closer. She turned back to her screen, effectively dismissing him. By morning, Thorne had separated herself from the main engineering team, working in a sectioned-off area near the main propulsion control systems. She had requested and received permission to disconnect several monitoring systems, claiming they were creating interference. Admiral Fisher was growing impatient. Commander, it's been nearly 24 hours since she arrived. We need results, not mysterious tinkering. I understand, Admiral, but her clearance comes from above, both our pay grades. Clearance doesn't equal competence. For all we know, she's making things worse. The conversation was interrupted by Chief Lang. Sir, you need to see this. On his tablet was a diagnostic readout, unlike anything they'd seen before. She's accessing core programming modules that even I didn't know existed. Is that a security concern? Fisher demanded. I'm not sure, Lang admitted. It's like discovering rooms in your house you didn't know were there. Commander Beaumont made a decision. I want to speak with her directly. When they reached Thorne's workstation, she was deep in concentration, lines of code scrolling rapidly across multiple screens. Miss Thorne, Beaumont began, we need an update on your progress. Working, she replied without looking up. That's not good enough. This carrier is my responsibility, and I need to know what you're doing to my ship. That got her attention. She turned, studying Beaumont with those piercing gray eyes. Your ship is being held hostage by its own programming commander. I'm trying to find the trigger mechanism. Explain. She gestured to the screen. Your propulsion system didn't fail. It was deactivated by a dormant algorithm that's been waiting for specific conditions to trigger it. Are you saying we were sabotaged? Admiral Fisher interjected. In a manner of speaking, but not in the way you're thinking. She turned back to her work. Give me a few more hours. Either I'll solve it or I won't. Watching over my shoulder won't make it happen faster. 18 hours later, the ship remained dead in the water. Most of the engineering team had been dismissed by Thorne, who worked alone in a sectioned-off area of the propulsion control room. Commander Beaumont entered, coffee in hand, looking haggarded. Any progress? Admiral Fisher shook his head. Nothing visible. She hasn't spoken more than 10 words since yesterday. Who is she? Beaumont asked. Every time I ask, I get told it's classified. Because it is, came a voice from behind them. The silver-haired Master Chief Worthington stepped forward. Sir, may I speak with you privately? Beaumont glanced at Fisher, who nodded. Make it quick, Chief. In a quiet corridor away from the bustling command center, Worthington glanced around before speaking. I served on the USS Thresher, 2-inch 04. Sir, experimental stealth submarine. We were running silent under the Bering Sea when our reactor experienced a catastrophic failure. Beaumont frowned. I never heard about any Thresher 2. That's because officially it never existed, Worthington explained. We were 400 meters down when the cooling systems failed. No communications, no way to surface, and 6 hours of emergency oxygen. What happened? A civilian specialist was aboard. She walked into the reactor room without protective gear, diagnosed the problem in minutes, and jury-rigged a solution that saved 118 sailors. That specialist is the woman down there now. Beaumont leaned against the bulkhead, processing this information. Why isn't this in any records I can access? Because what we were doing wasn't supposed to exist, sir. The mission was completely black. The technology we were testing was beyond classified. And this woman, what was her role? Worthington hesitated. She designed the reactor, not just components, the entire system. When it failed, the Navy engineers couldn't solve it. They said we were all dead men. She proved them wrong. Who is she, Chief? Her name was redacted from our mission reports. We were told never to speak of her. All I know is that she designed systems so advanced that most of the Navy's current tech is still catching up to her work from 20 years ago. As if on cue, the lights flickered throughout the ship. Moments later, a deep vibration began to build from below. What the hell was that? Beaumont demanded. Before Worthington could answer, the ship-wide communication system crackled. Bridge. This is engineering. Something's happening with the propulsion systems. Beaumont and Worthington ran back toward the engineering section, joined by Admiral Fisher from the command center. As they rushed through the corridors, they could feel the subtle change in the massive vessel like a sleeping giant, stirring. In the engine room, Thorne stood before an open panel, her hands steady as she manipulated components no one else recognized. Her face showed no triumph, no satisfaction, just focused determination. Admiral, Chief Lang's voice came over the intercom. The propulsion system is coming online. The engineering team had gathered around various monitoring stations, watching in disbelief as systems that had been completely unresponsive for days began to initialize. How is this possible? One of the Lockheed contractors demanded. We tried every restart protocol in existence. Lang shook his head, staring at the readouts. She's not restarting it. She's rebuilding it from the core architecture. When Fisher and Beaumont rushed to engineering, they found Thorne methodically closing panels and returning tools to her bag. It's fixed, she said simply. The room erupted in questions, but Admiral Fisher silenced everyone with a raised hand. What was the problem? He demanded. She looked at him with those piercing gray eyes. Your system was sabotaged. Not physically, mathematically. Someone embedded a dormant algorithm in the control software that activated when you entered these waters. How did you know? Because I designed the original system, she interrupted. What you're using now is my work, just modified. I recognized the signature. The room fell silent. Even the steady hum of the engine seemed to quiet in deference. Who are you? Commander Beaumont finally asked. Before she could answer, Master Chief Worthington stepped forward and snapped to attention, offering a crisp salute that seemed to surprise even him. Sir, she's the reason I'm alive to stand here today. The engineering bay erupted into chaos, questions firing from all directions. Admiral Fisher quickly took control of the situation. Everyone not directly involved in propulsion restart procedures cleared the room. Now, as the space emptied of all but essential personnel, Fisher turned to Thorne. I need a full explanation. The quantum navigation core was designed with certain safeguards, she said, her voice matter of fact. When I left the program 15 years ago, those safeguards were removed. What you have now is a system that can be remotely triggered to fail under specific circumstances. Are you saying someone in our own government did this? Beaumont asked, incredulous. I'm saying the system was designed to include fail-safes that would prevent it from being used in ways I did not approve of. She corrected. When I refused to remove those fail-safes, I was removed from the program instead. Someone else finished the work, but they never fully understood the underlying architecture. So when we entered these coordinates, Lang said slowly, we triggered a dormant protocol, one that was supposed to be impossible to bypass, Thorne confirmed. Except by me. This is beyond concerning, Admiral Fisher said. If what you're saying is true, every carrier in the fleet with this propulsion system could be vulnerable. They are, she said simply. But I've uploaded a patch that should prevent this particular trigger from activating again. Beaumont studied her face. Why would you build in these fail-safes in the first place? For the first time, Thorne looked uncomfortable because I saw how the technology was being weaponized. The original design was meant for deep space exploration, not military applications. When the project shifted, I built in safeguards to prevent certain uses. That sounds like treason, Admiral Fisher said coldly. That sounds like conscience, Worthington countered, surprising everyone. The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, Thorne broke the silence. You have two options, Admiral. You can have me arrested for what I did 15 years ago, or you can let me finish fixing your ship and addressing the vulnerabilities in the rest of the fleet. Your choice. Fisher's expression was unreadable. Commander Beaumont, a word. The two officers stepped aside, speaking in hushed tones while Chief Lang continued monitoring the propulsion restart sequence. Can we trust her? Beaumont asked quietly. Do we have a choice? Fisher countered. If what she says is true, the entire carrier group could be vulnerable. And if she's lying, then why fix the Odysseus at all? She could have left us stranded. Beaumont nodded slowly. There's something else, sir. Worthington's story about the submarine. I made a few discreet calls while she was working. That mission may not exist in official records, but there are people who remember it. People high up. What did they say? They said, if she's who Worthington claims she is, we give her whatever she needs and stay out of her way. Admiral Fisher took a deep breath. Very well, but she doesn't leave my sight until this is done. They returned to Thorne, who was watching their conversation with patient detachment. You'll continue your work under supervision, Fisher informed her. Once the Odysseus is fully operational, we'll discuss the fleet-wide implications. She nodded. I'll need access to secure communications to send the patch to Naval Intelligence, and I'll need to verify when the other carriers receive and implement it. Granted, Fisher said, but everything goes through proper channels. Of course, she turned back to the console. Now, if you'll excuse me, we're only halfway done here. For the next several hours, Thorne worked alongside Chief Lang and a select team of engineers, explaining the changes she was making as she went. The carrier systems continued their reactivation sequence, each successful stage bringing visible relief to Commander Beaumont and the bridge crew. By midnight, the USS Odysseus was fully operational again. The propulsion system was running at 95% efficiency, with the remaining issues scheduled for repair once they returned to port. In the Admiral's briefing room, Thorne sat across from Fisher and Beaumont, her posture relaxed despite the intensity of their questioning. Let me get this straight. Beaumont said, you designed a propulsion system so advanced it's still classified, built-in secret, fail-safes to prevent its weaponization. Got removed from the program when you wouldn't remove them, and now you've been called back to fix the problem you created. That's an oversimplification, she replied, but essentially correct. Why did they call you now? Fisher asked. After 15 years of keeping you away from these systems? Because no one else could fix it, she said simply. They tried for 3 days. The best minds in naval engineering tried. Then they called me. And you came, Beaumont observed, despite everything that happened. For the first time, emotion flickered across her face. Something between resignation and determination. I didn't build these systems to fail, Commander. I built them to advance human exploration. The fact that they were repurposed doesn't change my responsibility toward them. Worthington, who had been standing silently by the door, spoke up. Sir, if I may, what she did on the Thresher 2, walking into an irradiated reactor chamber to save us, that wasn't the action of someone who wished our military harm. I'm well aware of that, Chief, Fisher replied. Which is why she's sitting here as a consultant rather than in the brig. Thorne leaned forward. Admiral, this incident wasn't an accident. Someone knew exactly when and where the Odysseus would be vulnerable. They knew exactly how to trigger the failsafe. Are you suggesting a security breach? I'm suggesting there are perhaps 3 people in the world who understood the core architecture well enough to exploit it this way. I'm one of them. The other 2 worked with me on the original project. Names Beaumont demanded doctors, Victor Chamberlain and Annalise Klein. Both brilliant, both ethically flexible. Fisher made notes on his tablet. We'll investigate. In the meantime, the Joint Chiefs want a full briefing on these vulnerabilities and how to address them fleet-wide. That will take more than a quick patch, Thorne warned. The underlying architecture needs to be redesigned. I can do it, but it will take time. How much time? A month, maybe 2, depending on how much resistance I get from the contractors who modified my original design. Beaumont and Fisher exchanged glances. You understand this means you'll be working with military oversight for the foreseeable future, Beaumont said. I expected nothing less. She stood up. Now, if you don't mind, I've been awake for nearly 40 hours. I'd like to rest before we reach port. As she turned to leave, Commander Beaumont asked one final question. Why did you do it? Build in the fail-safes, knowing what it might cost you. She paused at the door. Because technology without conscience is just weaponry, commander, and I didn't become an engineer to build better ways to kill people. After she left, escorted by Master Chief Worthington to guest quarters, Admiral Fisher let out a long breath. "What do you make of her?" he asked Beaumont. "Brilliant, principled, and dangerous," Beaumont replied. "Exactly the kind of person our military both needs and fears. Keep her close," Fisher ordered, "and make sure she has everything she needs. If she's right about this being a targeted attack, we need to be prepared for the next one." As the USS Odysseus powered up to full capacity, preparing to resume its mission, as Isabella Thorne packed her few tools into her worn leather messenger bag, Admiral Fisher approached her workstation, his earlier suspicion replaced with careful respect. "The Joint Chiefs want to speak with you directly. They're arranging secure communications now." "That won't be necessary," she replied without looking up from her packing. "Tell them the sabotage signature match is Project Lazarus. They'll understand." Fisher's eyebrows rose slightly. Project Lazarus was terminated 15 years ago. "No," she corrected gently. "It was rebranded. Look deeper into the quantum navigation initiative that followed. Same research, different name, fewer ethical constraints." Fisher studied her face. "You were the lead designer." "I was," she acknowledged, "until I realized what they intended to do with my work." A young helicopter pilot appeared at the door of the engineering bay. "Ma'am, your transport is ready." As she shouldered her bag, Commander Beaumont stepped forward, having overheard the exchange. "You're leaving?" "Just like that." "My work here is done," she said simply. "But we don't even know your name, your real name." A hint of a smile touched her lips. "That's the point, Commander." Beaumont shook his head in disbelief. "You just saved a 12 billion carrier and potentially prevented an international incident. There should be recognition, commendations." "I've seen how the Navy handles recognition for classified operations," she replied. "Trust me, this is better for everyone." On the flight deck, as she walked toward the waiting helicopter, Master Chief Worthington stood at attention. One by one, the sailors who witnessed her work joined him, forming an impromptu honor guard. A salute rippled down the line, unofficial, unordered, but deeply felt. Thorne paused, clearly surprised by the gesture. For a brief moment, her composed demeanor faltered, revealing something vulnerable and human beneath the technical brilliance. She returned the salute crisply, then continued to the helicopter without looking back. Admiral Fisher stood with Commander Beaumont, watching the aircraft lift off into the morning sky. "Will we see her again?" Beaumont asked. "If we're very unlucky," Fisher replied. "People like her only appear when systems fail catastrophically." "That doesn't seem fair, sir." "Fairness has nothing to do with it, Commander. Some people serve in the light, receiving medals and public recognition. Others serve in shadows so deep, even their names become classified. Both are necessary." As the helicopter disappeared into the distance, the massive carrier began moving forward for the first time in days, its propulsion systems functioning flawlessly. 2 weeks later, in a classified briefing room at the Pentagon, Admiral Fisher delivered his report on the incident to the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense. The sabotage was sophisticated, designed to activate only when the carrier entered those specific